In today's show, the Trailblazers winning streak finally comes to an end. Long live the streak. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're talking about the end of the winning streak. After winning 6 in a row, 12 days between losses, the Blazers are finally no longer undefeated for a fortnight. They lose to the Minnesota Timberwolves, thanks in part to just a totally dreadful fourth quarter. We'll talk about that game, what went wrong in the fourth quarter, why this is proof that the streak was all not. No, I'm just kidding. You don't actually have to overreact to single results in a long NBA season, but we'll talk about the game and kind of what went into not getting there, plus some other news. I think there's some health stuff to watch with Denny Avdia and certainly Rob Williams, who left the game early with an injury. And then the Blazers signed a new two-way player. We will get into all of that. Let's start doing what we do. Fastest recap in the West. Blazers lose this game 114-98, and they were playing the short-handed Timberwolves. Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo are out until after the All-Star break with extended injuries. So, the Wolves are already down some of their regulars. But in this particular game, they're also missing two guys that are on short-term injuries, notably no Anthony Edwards. So Big Ant, as he would have been known if we'd had to talk about him in this game. Ant Edwards not available for the Wolves with a hip injury, and Mike Conley, the veteran point guard, also missed the game with a finger injury. So the Wolves are playing, rookie Rob Dillingham. They're starting Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert. You're getting a lot of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and as it has been in recent games, they're trying to get more out of Jaden McDaniels. That has sort of been a trend with the shorthanded Wolves. Is like Jaden McDaniels is the one who gets more of the offensive load. But I think where you really feel it, like the starting lineup is still kind of fine. Obviously, they're missing their star power, but it's the Wolves bench is just really depleted. Like the second unit for the Wolves is young and fringy NBA guys, and that's where you're going to feel it. But the Blazers generally pretty healthy in this game. They're no Matisse Thybulle, but they pretty much got everybody else, albeit not for the entire game because Rob Williams left early. But Blazers trailed by as many as 9 in the first quarter, kind of a slow start, even against the shorthanded Wolves. But the Blazers came back 24-22 Minnesota after one, and the Blazers then just dominated. A dominant second quarter. They scored 38 points in the second frame. They shot 57% overall, including 4 of 6 from 3, and they ripped off a 38-23 quarter. Like, they were just humming. They were rolling. Anthony Simons led the way scoring in the first half, and the Blazers go into the break up 60-47. 60 points on this Wolves team is that's a number, right? Like that's putting up that is some quality scoring. After the game, Chauncey Billups will lament that he thought that the Blazers didn't play particularly well, especially in that opening quarter, and that the lead didn't feel as big as it could have been heading into halftime. Watching it live, that is not how I felt, but I, of course, was watching it on television, not in the gym on the sidelines, knowing the team the way Chauncey Billups does, and boy, was he right, because things started to go south, but not immediately. The Blazers led by 8 heading into the into the fourth quarter, and they were kind of, they were playing well to close the quarter. This wasn't like, you could see them absolutely crumbling. It's when they got to the fourth that things started to crumble in a hurry. In the opening 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, the Blazers gave up a 9-2 run. The only points they had were a couple Denny Avdia free throws. All of a sudden, an 8-point game is a 1-point game, and like it's just you've given it all away. You've given your advantage instead of saying, like, if the Blazers are the team that makes a 9-2 run, all of a sudden, you're up 15 with 9 minutes left, and you can start to play smart and be aggressive and do the thing that Lamar Hurd always wants them to do, and just walk the dog up the court, which I will note you could probably only get away with once. You can steal 12 seconds, but you're not going to be able to do it every single time down the floor. But I love that Lamar is always calling for it, because the Blazers never, ever do it, and they should. But in any case, they aren't up 15 with a chance to walk the dog and kill time and all of those things. Instead, it's a 1-point game with 9 minutes left. And it's like, all right, well, you're going to have to play. You're going to have to win. You're going to have to play and win the game. And the Wolves come all the way back over the next two more minutes and take the lead. Jaden McDaniels, the Blazers miss a shot inside. Wolves run the other way. Jaden McDaniels gets a layup. Wolves by 1. Portland calls a timeout. There's 6 minutes and 48 seconds left in this game. Wolves by 1 after the Blazers have led by double digits for much of the second half. But again, it's a 1-point game with half a quarter remaining. You're on the road against a pretty good team that's undermanned. You just need to score, right? Like you're at the 7-minute mark and it's 92-91. It's not like you're getting shredded on defense. The problem is you're just going to need to score some more points. You had a really nice offensive first half. You were in the midst of a dreadful start to the fourth quarter. Can you get it done? No, absolutely not. Over the final 6 minutes and 48 seconds, the Blazers were outscored 22-7. Portland went 1 of 10 from the floor, including 0 of 7 from 3. They turned the ball over 4 times. 2 DeAndre Ayton turnovers and 2 Jeremy Grant turnovers. The Grant turnovers were particularly bad because they were kind of like live ball, drive into nowhere, throw it into, oops, I'm just going to throw it away without a plan type of thing. DA kind of more standard, like bad hands type stuff. But you don't score 1 of 10 from the floor, 0 of 7 from 3, which means that the Blazers got some free throws, took some free throws in this stretch. But in terms of they're just not getting a ton of 2-point jump shots. Like even if you include the free throws, I didn't check if they were all shooting fouls, but even if you just include the free throws, you're talking about 9 2-point attempts and 7 threes, just like, they weren't attacking the rim. This is a team that has a pretty awesome shot diet in general. They don't take a lot of non-paint twos. And I thought Rudy Gobert's impact, particularly in this final 6 minutes, was really, really acutely felt. I thought the Blazers turned into a jump shooting team. Just 3 of their 10 recorded field goals in the final 7 minutes are twos. They turned into a jump shooting team. Obviously, teams take threes. There is some of this is just like the nature of it. When you're trying to come back, you're going to take more threes. And the Blazers, when they found themselves down by double digits, started jacking up some more threes at the very end of this game. So it's not a perfect measure, but overall, in the fourth quarter, 3 of 22 from the floor, 1 of 10 from 3, committed 5 total turnovers, but 4 of them were in the final 7 minutes. It's just kind of a how to lose. It was a how to lose. The offense goes completely cold. I don't even think the Blazers played that terribly until the fourth quarter, when their offense just completely deserted them. They lose 114-98. That's your slowest recap in the West. 8 minutes, because I stopped to talk about a lot of other things. It's okay. There's a couple newsy things in this game. Denny Avdia was listed as questionable with a right hand sprain, and Rob Williams left the game with about 9 minutes left in the second quarter and did not return. Was first listed out as questionable with a right knee injury, and then eventually said he will not return for the remainder of the game. I'd be stunned if we see Rob Williams before the All-Star break. Blazers play 2 more games for the remainder of the first half, quote unquote, of the season. 2 games in Denver before they go probably somewhere warm for the All-Star break. Let's talk about those injuries. Let's talk about kind of what this loss means in light of 6 straight wins and a couple other odds and ends in the second segment. Join me there, won't ya? First, though, I want to talk to you about underwear. My underwear. Skims makes underwear for everybody. They were maybe famously making more femme underwear, but now they're making underwear targeted for the more masculine undergarment wearers. You might have heard that they're got great quality because I've told you that before. You might have heard that they're really comfy. That's because I've told you that before. You might have heard hype from other spaces. Well, let me tell you, the hype is real. Here's the thing I will say about Skims. They were nice enough to send me over a couple pairs of underwear. You put them on in the morning. They're extremely comfortable. You go and live the rest of your day. They're extremely comfortable and you never notice them. The worst thing that can happen to you during the day is to be operating your day-to-day life and think about what's going on with my underwear. You don't want to have that experience. What you want to do is you want to just live your stinking life, and Skims helps you feel comfortable and live your stinking life. So if you want comfortable underwear that you can feel good about wearing and then never stinking notice, shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com and Skims stores. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and then select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gift for Valentine's Day, which is coming up, Skims just launched their best Valentine's Day shop ever, available in sizes for women, men, kids, and even pets. All right. So the big news out of this game is that Rob Williams did not return in the second quarter. You know, we'll talk about the fourth quarter here in a moment. Outscored 38-14. They lose the game because they just couldn't score. But the news here is the Rob Williams injury, because it's just such a stinking bummer. It's such a stinking bummer. You know, the Blazers are still it seemed like they were still going to run this sort of like one night it's Rob off the bench and one night it's Donovan Clingan off the bench, and against the T-Wolves, it was a Rob night. And Williams was playing really well. He's a good basketball player, and he was playing well. In his 8 minutes, he was 3 of 5 from the floor, 6 points and 4 boards, but the Blazers were killing in his minutes. They were killing his minutes. They were plus 16 in his 8-minute stretch in the first half, right? And that coincides with the second quarter when they were actually making shots. So like maybe Rob's on the court when they're not making shots in the fourth quarter and they don't look as good. I think single game plus minus is pretty much bogus. So I don't want to point to that. But you could see him playing well. Rebounding, passing, like even the play he got seemed to get injured on. You know, you saw what he can be. He rolled to the rim on a pick and roll. They didn't find him. He comes back out to the 3-point line, sets up like he's going to do a dribble handoff. They don't get to the dribble handoff. He flips it cross court quickly, on time, on target to Denny Avdia, who's able to attack, get into the rim. As the defense gets over in his way, Denny has to put up a hard shot. Rob Williams floats behind Rudy Gobert, finds the ball off the rim, tip, jam, dunk. So like, understanding the pick and roll, understanding spacing, a quick pass, then crashing the glass, just like little stuff, right? Like Rob Williams excels in the margins. He does little stuff that's helpful, and he dunks home that miss from Denny. He actually helped Denny up off the ground because Denny fell over on the missed shot. That's about a 9:15 mark. And as he comes down, I did not notice this live, but I've rewatched it now before I'm recording this on Sunday afternoon. He comes down, he kind of grimaces a little, you know, and like knowing what you're looking for, you can see it in real time. He grimaces a little as he lands. And then as they come down, there's a stoppage for blood. I think someone had a bloody nose, and there's a stoppage for blood. And Williams comes out of the game, and he immediately goes and sits down on the bench. Not notable in real time. Again, did not notice this in real time, but knowing what you know now, that he's not going to come back in the game, it's like, it seems like his body language was a little frustrated. They didn't mention it on the broadcast. I didn't even realize that he was out hurt until there was an update from the Blazers medical staff or PR staff that said he's questionable for the remainder of the game with a right knee injury. It wasn't like an obvious and acute injury, but the right knee is the knee he had surgery on. He's had surgery on both knees, but most recently that right knee. That's a bummer. It's just such a bummer for Rob. You just want him to be healthy. He was, first announced as questionable, then ruled out for the remainder of the game. Can't imagine we see him in either of the Denver games. There'd be almost no reason to get him back for either of those games. Even if he's like kind of healthy, you might as well just give him if you can give him more than a week if you closing in on 2 weeks, 10 days or so. If you give him off until at least after the All-Star break, when the Blazers don't come out of the break until Feb 20th at home against the Lakers, who recently added a famous Slovenian to the roster. So it just stinks for Rob. I think there's time in the future to talk about like the decision to keep Robert Williams on the roster and the Blazers sort of maybe high asking price for trading him at the trade deadline and all those things. That's a time that we'll talk about that. When players get hurt, talking about them as trade assets, I find disgusting. So I'm not going to do that. But at some point in the future, we can talk about how the Blazers have dealt with Rob Williams. For now, I just want to say I hope he gets better, because it's just you never want to see anyone get hurt, and Rob's a good dude, and I certainly hope that this is a very minor thing. There was some reporting from Sean Hyken of Rose Garden Report that the knee injury stuff was considered just precautionary, or seems just precautionary. It was I don't exactly have the language right in front of me. I apologize, but Hyken said that it was, it seemed like it was just precautionary. Yeah, I hope that's right. But if it was bad news, they'd be taking precautions as well. The other injury I think is worth keeping an eye on is this Deni Avdija wrist thing. Deni was bad in this game, 1 of 8 from the floor, 0 of 4 from 3, and some of the 3-pointers he misses are just like wide open practice shots in the gym. That right wrist is, or the right hand, that's the hand he uses. He is super duper right-handed. He dribbles hard to his right hand. It's his shooting hand, but he's a right-hand dominant player. Obviously, no one's going to be good when their shooting hand is hurt. I don't mean to be unique to Deni, but that's just bad news. When he checked in the fourth quarter, Deni didn't play a ton in this game, in part because he is struggling, I think. But because a hand is not exactly like a cardiovascular challenge, you can still play as many minutes. It's an effectiveness. He came in the fourth quarter when the game was kind of over, but they're down double digits and they're going to make a comeback. And immediately upon checking in, he got bumped a little bit going for an offensive rebound. He grimaced. He came down the court and kind of got, just navigating and having to use your hands because it's basketball. And there's some just physicality involved off the ball. Deni Avdija immediately grimacing when he's bumping into a player he's trying to defend on defense. Like hurt. He is someone who is dealing with a hand injury. How serious it is, hard to know. He hasn't been on the injury report, and then all of a sudden he is questionable, but he's playing through it. So obviously he feels like he can play through it, but clearly it's bothering him. How much that's going to play into his shooting struggles right now, and some whatever it is, I don't know, but I know that he looked hurt. He looked like someone who was dealing with an injury to your shooting hand, and that's a hard thing to work through. The Blazers really need Deni's offense. They really need him to score. He is such a big part of their success over the last month has been how, even 2 months, but they haven't been winning all that time. Their recent success has been tied to Deni a lot. Not every single night, but a lot of Deni being really good. So I hope he gets better. And maybe he sits and can be fine over the break too. But I think something to keep an eye on because clearly it was bothering him. Blazers are calling it a right hand sprain. I've seen people online call it a wrist injury. That might be the same thing. Right injury below your elbow, or whatever, above, I guess, depending on how you want to describe an arm. But I would say below. In any case, it's clearly he was clearly bothered by it. How much was impacting his performance is maybe in the eye of the beholder, but clearly bothered by it. I hope Deni gets better because they need him. Real quick on the fourth quarter, the Blazers were going to lose at some point. They were going to lose at some point. You win 6 in a row. You win 10 of 11. It's like there is a tendency with fans. I think this shows up a lot in the playoffs. It's like a team wins game 1. It's like, how could they possibly lose? You feel just like you've solved it, and it's always going to be like that. You're going to have bad shooting nights. I think that's largely what this was. The Blazers had 38 points in the second quarter. They scored 38 points in the second half. They shot 57% in that second quarter while scoring 38 points. They shot under 30% from the field, including 2 of 20 from 3 in the second half. Jeremy Grant missed some wide open ones. Deni Avdija missed some wide open ones. It was not a particularly good shooting night from Anthony Simons, 3 of 11, but nobody else really picked up the slack. I mean, I guess Scoot was 2 of 5 from 3, but that's not exactly volume. You get a 1 of 6 night from shooting sharp from Shaedon Sharpe, 0 of 6 from 3 from Jeremy Grant. Tumani only took 1 3 and he missed it. 0 of 4 from Deni. It's like, that's how you go 7 of 35. But again, 2 of 20 in the second half. You're just going to lose these games. I don't think this is an indictment to if you want this to be about the streak was actually fake and they blew it. And sure, you are allowed to overreact to any game. I'm not going to overreact to any one game. When a team wins, it feels like they'll never lose. When they come back a little bit down to earth, and this one, it feels like, oh, this was all a big mirage, and this team actually stinks, and fire Jeremy Grant into the sun and all this stuff. But I think the truth is that Grant has struggled on offense all year, and they've been really good on defense and gotten contributions from everyone else. The formula has been shoot well enough to win and have a baseline of good defense. They had a baseline of pretty darn good defense over the first 40 minutes of this game. They just couldn't score, and then when you just absolutely can't score and you're turn the ball over the final 7 minutes, you're going to give up points, right? Because the team is, they go 1 of 10 in the final 6.5 minutes. Every single shot, basically, the T-Wolves are running off a miss, and you've turned the ball over 4 times, 3 of which were live ball turnovers. It's it happens that way. I do think in general, on the year, like if you look at the sort of larger sample size, shooting has been an issue for the Blazers. Whether that's a Denny Avdija figures his wrist out and gets back to shooting really well, and you get some aggression to the mean from Jeremy Grant, who's a good 3-point shooter and has been terrible on 2s all year. Maybe they have better shooting nights, but I think like they shot terribly and the T-Wolves just like really deterred them from the paint, and those two things kind of showed up. And it is, in some ways, it's like, yeah, wouldn't it be nice if the Blazers had like that A1 high level scorer that like they can say, oh my gosh, the offense is so bad, here, you take it and save us. Sure. But that's not what they've needed over the last 11 games to be competitive. They've done that by having a baseline of very good defense, being able to run a little bit, and getting each night somebody steps up. Tonight, there was no somebody who stepped up. Anthony Simons had 21. No one else scored more than 14, and that was Shaedon Sharpe, who was 6 of 14, not a particularly efficient night. And again, like just has not been able to find a rhythm from the outside. No reason to freak out, but I do think this fourth quarter was bad in a way that it's like, man, against high-level defenses, is this team going to have trouble? Yes, because high-level defenses make it hard on you to score. Was this the best version of the T-Wolves defense? No, but like the T-Wolves, Naz Reid on a heater, shot really well. Jaden McDaniels, 30 points, played, stepped into a role and played really well, and the Blazers just weren't good enough on offense to be competitive in the fourth quarter. I wouldn't assign too much more meaning to it than that. The Blazers have 2 very challenging games coming up against the Nuggets. At some point, they were always going to run up against good teams and face tough tests. That's the nature of this thing. Even if you were like, this team could make the playoffs, you're talking about them sneaking into the playoffs as one of the bottom seeds, right? Right, the teams that are above them in the standings are likely better. That's the nature of it. I am personally not even remotely moved or freaking out by the results of this game. Your mileage may vary. As always, choose your own adventure. Speaking of own adventures, the Blazers got a new adventurer on the roster. Cidi Sissoko joins on a 2-way deal. Happy trails, Taze Moore. Let's talk about the newest member of the Trailblazers that you need to know. Join me in that third segment, won't ya? First, though, let's talk FanDuel. Today is the day of the big Super Bowl game, the big football game where they play for the championship. So by the time you're listening to this, if you're listening to it right away, the game's about to tip off. If you're listening to it afterwards, guess what? Basketball season is upon us. It is the NBA stretch run, and FanDuel wants you to know that when an NBA game tips off, the action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that live action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can place live bets throughout the game. So if you miss some, tip-off betting on who might win and all of those outcomes, well, through the end of the game, up through the fourth quarter, you can follow along and be a up to the second informed live bettor on FanDuel with their app that gives you everything you need to know, from play-by-play to live scores, all in the same place where you place your bets. So if you want to get in on the action during the NBA season, FanDuel is the place to do it. And right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. So, the Blazers have a new player on the roster, 20-year-old Cidi Sissoko, who's had an interesting journey to find himself on a 2-way contract. He was drafted by the Spurs in 2023 in the second round, 44th overall, so like a middle second round pick. He is 20 years old, came into the league super young out of the G League Ignite. The Blazers have signed him to a 2-way deal, and because they had their 2-way deals three two-way spots full, they had to waive Taze Moore. I have not seen subsequent news whether Taze Moore's returning player rights have been retained by the Remix, but as I understand it, they already had it. So I imagine he will still be available on the Blazers G League team, but he is no longer on a two-way contract, which means he's not truly an affiliate of the Blazers. Cidi Sissoko has replaced him. Here's Sissoko's story. He has spent 2 years with the Spurs after getting drafted in 2023. He's appeared in 29 games. His first year in the 23-24 season, he played more games in the G League with the Austin Spurs. He played 23 G League games than he did with the big club. And this season, he's played more minutes, but still relatively limited. He's a 6'7" forward who, coming out of the draft, was known as a defender and playmaker, an intriguing passer and rangy defender who maybe wasn't a super elite athlete, but had some intriguing skills there and was kind of a non-shooter. And that was the knock on him. If he can be a shooter, then the defensive ability and the playmaking ability really becomes intriguing because, he's 6'5.5" barefoot. He's 6'7" in shoes. He's had a journey to get here, though. He went pro. He's born in France and then started his pro journey as a 13-year-old in Spain. That age seems crazy to Americans, but relatively common in other parts of the world where sports aren't directly tied to institutions of learning, such that if you are going to be a pro basketball player, you just go ahead and do it as what would be a ninth grader, as opposed to matriculating through other portions of the education system that are increasingly a sham. In any case, Sidy goes and he joins Baskonia in Spain, which is he's in their youth development program as a 13-year-old, and he eventually makes his debut in the ACB at 17. And from reading at least his Wikipedia page, Baskonia needed to play him in a game at 17 in order to retain his rights, and then he's basically sent immediately to the second-tier Spanish league. So, he's a guy who they said, we develop him he's from a 13-year-old. We're going to continue to keep him in our developmental program, and we value retaining his rights. And the ACB is a quality league outside of the NBA. But after just one season in that second-tier Spanish league, playing within the Baskonia developmental tree, he joined the G League Ignite. He was actually a teammate of your boy Sterling Jewel Henderson. That's Scooter. And he played on the G League Ignite in the 2022-2023 season. I saw Sissoko as in his the Ignite played a couple games here in his one season, and he was a guy who came off the bench. They were supposed to have up to 7 first-round picks. That didn't turn out to be the case, although they did have a handful of high draft picks. Shout out to Ron Holland and Matas Pazelis. But I will say in the one game I saw him live, Sissoko did not particularly stand out to me other than being NBA-sized wing, right? Who's that dude? He's big kind of thing. But other than that, the skills weren't exactly jumping off the page for me or off the court for me. Again, I saw him play one game in the G League. I'm a very limited scout. But overall, last season with the G League Ignite, that includes run up to the tournament tip off and the G League's regular season, he averaged 11 points, 3 boards, and 3 assists, shot 43% from the floor, including 31% from 3. Then, as part of the series of trades made by the Spurs and Kings, he ended up a free agent. So he's initially, I believe, traded to the Kings as part of the De'Aaron Fox trade, which landed Fox in San Antonio and Zach LaVine in Sacramento, and then flipped in the subsequent trade where the Kings acquired Jonas Valanciunas and then eventually waived by the Wizards. He's a sort of a deep bench youngster. I guess it's somewhat surprising that the Wizards didn't value him as just a dude to take a flyer on, but I'm not familiar enough with their sort of two-way spots in general organization. I know they have more vets than they probably want with Malcolm Brogdon and Chris Middleton now in tow, but they chose to waive him. The Blazers claimed him off waivers or let him pass through waivers and then signed him to a two-way deal and waived Taze Moore. I think this is the right type of person to get in on a two-way deal. The Blazers' current two-way guys are all 25, right? They're all I don't want to say finished products because that's not the nature of how basketball works, but guys who are much closer to what they're going to be than in terms of have a lot of a long development route. And obviously, like, Sissoko's played in an NBA system with the Spurs, where they decided he was, not going to necessarily be part of the program, and maybe he needed some longer, a longer runway to get there, and maybe he's still a flyer anyways. But for my money, I think you should treat two-way players or two-way contracts in one of two ways. One, specific positional depth, as particularly if you're a competitive team. You should say, we need an emergency point guard. Can we sign a 25-year-old, 27-year-old to a two-way deal? So in case we have injuries, we have that emergency point guard, or, emergency big man depth. Or they should just be like true developmental flyers, right? Because in a situation where like the Blazers need Bryce McGowens to play because of injuries, things have already gone far enough south that probably like chasing wins isn't as important. Like for specifically the Blazers, good teams, like teams that are good teams. The Blazers have won 10 of 12. Teams that are like chasing higher tiers of postseason competition should treat two-way contracts differently, maybe, in my opinion. But for a team like the Blazers, I think treating them as like just like absolute upside dart throws is probably what I would prefer. But I can't say that I have like a strong sense of the like large scale difference between the Cidi Sissoko's upside and Taze Moore. I would guess just because one is older than the other that Sissoko has more upside, but I'm literally judging that by birth year. Like I'm like I couldn't tell you anything else. But I do think this is an intriguing flyer. He's he's the first European to ever play for the G League Ignite program. A guy who came over as a teenager to try to be a first round draft pick, didn't quite get it, and is now on a two-way deal, still chasing the dream. I don't think we'll see him too much. Maybe if you go to some remix games here coming up, you might get a chance to look at him. But I think the Blazers should be invested in keeping him within the program and sign him to another two-way deal next season as well if they can, because he's like the exact type of player that having played for the remix and getting some development could maybe pan out in the future. I think more so than maybe some other guys who are a little bit further along in their development journey. Okay, that's going to do it for today's show. We got more shows coming later this week. In fact, 5 of them. This one's Monday show coming out just before the Super Bowl on Sunday. Are any of you gonna listen to it? Yes, many of you are, because you're deeply dedicated, and I appreciate you. So if you are, tell your friends about the program. Tell them we do it 5 days a week wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. Come back for more shows the rest of the week. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.